As the conflict in Syria continues, Christians are fleeing that country in fear of militant extremists who are targeting minority, ethnic, and religious communities. John Pontifex, who is head of press and information for Aid to the Church in Need, spoke with Anne Schneibel about the growing humanitarian and pastoral concerns for Syrian Christians.
The first thing to say is that it's very difficult to elicit from Syria a clear picture as to the nature of the problem and the nature of how things are changing with regard to that problem. But what we do know is that there is a range of factors at work which are making it very difficult for minority groups. As part of the mix of different militant groups at work in the region now, we are seeing a systematic assault on minority groups. And a lot of this is organized along ethnic lines, but particularly religious lines. And the Christians would seem to be in the line of fire. I was in touch with a woman who herself had family in Syria, and they were reporting to her the situation as they experienced it on the ground just outside Damascus. And they were saying that the extremists were walking through the streets and were making it clear that Christians should either leave or face being killed. The statement was that alauitas for the grave, Christians for Beirut, and if they don't go to Beirut, they too will end up in the grave. So we're seeing some very horrific incidents, not least the killing of a Syrian priest whose body was found mutilated on a Damascus road, and his eyes had been gouged out, and there were reports that his body was so badly affected it was quite a difficult task to identify it. So to desecrate a man who is religious in that way has a wider significance. It shows that there is a specific religious dimension to the violence now, and that Christians are really leaving en masse, and there is a concern that Syria, whose Christian presence was until now really quite strong, will go the same way as Iraq, where the number of Christians declined from perhaps 1.4 million at the last census in 1987 to barely 200,000 today. So if that happens in Syria, where next for Christians across the region?
What sort of support can be brought to the Christians in Syria, pastorally especially? And obviously it's a huge pastoral challenge to bring pastoral care to those Christians in Syria just for security reasons. But what is being done, what can be done for those in Syria, and also those who have left Syria, those who are trying to find a new home for themselves?
Well, I was myself in Jordan quite recently, and we went to visit a displacement camp on the border with Syria, and they were saying that every day 300 to 400 people were arriving at that particular displacement camp, and that within a few weeks or perhaps months, the number of people arriving there has shot up from just a few hundred to as many as 40,000. So you've got this mass movement of people, an exodus really, of some proportions taking place with not just Christians, I hasten to add, people of all faiths really, making for sanctuary, making for safety in neighboring countries. Christians have gone to Lebanon mostly, and Aid to the Church in Need, whose primary objective is to help Christians and has a long-standing commitment to helping refugees. ACN has targeted help for Christians from Syria arriving in Lebanon and provided them with the very basics that they need. So that's food, that's medical help, and also shelter. We're also helping Christian communities actually still in Syria, and at certain times we've been able to target specific, if perhaps quite small, but very targeted aid packages to help those most in need. There was a village close to the border with Lebanon where opposing sides had encamped outside, and the villagers were trapped in the middle and could not do anything, could not go anywhere, and all supplies had been cut off. But ACN, Aid to the Church in Need, through a particular network of contacts, was able to get help into that village. And that help is taking place in different parts of the country. We helped a large number of Christians who fled the second biggest Christian community in Syria, which is in Homs. And when that particular city came under fire in the spring, thousands and thousands of Christians fled to the neighboring countryside, and Aid to the Church in Need provided help, working through Bishop Antoine Odo, the Chaldean Bishop of Aleppo. We were able to provide emergency help, and Bishop Odo was able to tell Aid to the Church in Need benefactors here in the UK and London just exactly what's happened to that help at a talk that he gave both at Westminster Cathedral in London and in the Houses of Parliament at a meeting there.
All right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us this afternoon. Now, is there
Not at all.
Is there anything else you'd like to add about the situation?
Yes, I think the main extra point is that the crisis in Syria for Christians should not be seen in isolation. There is a growing number of reports from different parts of the Middle East which point to the rise of extremism and the rise of extremist intolerance, which has Christians in its sights, not the only things in its sights, but they are one of the main things, main groups to be affected. And we are seeing increased pressure on the Christian community to either get out or find some way to safeguard their future by withdrawing to some extent from society because of the risk that's entailed in them retaining a fully visible presence. So this is a phenomenon now. It comes to a new state of development with the Arab Spring, and at Aid to the Church in Need we have an absolute obligation to raise awareness of the facts and figures that support this particular way of looking at current developments, and to appeal for prayer, appeal for people to seek the Lord to give comfort and support to those desperately in need, and also to enlist help from those who can be in a position to provide material help. So we appeal for that help, and we appeal for those prayers, and we thank all of those who have given that support over the years.